Let's dive into the phenomenon of the pre-workout crash. You might have experienced it. You feel amazing during your session thanks to a potent supplement, but an hour later, you're exhausted, irritable, and craving sugar. In this talk, I want to explain why that happens and how you can avoid it. We'll look at the difference between real energy and the illusion created by stimulants, and we'll explore physiological mechanisms like adenosine rebound and neurotransmitter depletion that contribute to those dreaded crashes. I'll show you how to identify crash-prone formulas and share strategies to maintain smooth energy without sacrificing performance. By the end, you'll know how to choose and use supplements wisely so you get a boost without the burnout. First, let's outline what we'll cover. Here's what we'll unpack in today's session. We'll start by defining a pre-workout crash and identifying common symptoms so you know what to look for. Then we'll discuss the critical distinction between true energy generated by ATP production and proper fuel, and mere stimulation, which is a perception created by neurotransmitter release. We'll delve into the physiological causes of crashes, adenosine rebound, neurotransmitter depletion, hormonal stress responses, blood sugar swings, and dehydration. After understanding the causes, we'll talk about how to recognize crash-prone formulas and share practical strategies to prevent crashes. Our goal is to help you maintain smooth, sustained energy rather than experiencing a spike followed by a slump. With the overview in place, let's define what a crash really is. A pre-workout crash happens when the stimulant high wears off and your body swings hard in the opposite direction. After the initial surge, you suddenly feel drained, irritable, or mentally foggy. Symptoms include loss of energy, mood swings, dizziness, shakiness, and intense cravings for sugar or more caffeine. You might find yourself unable to concentrate, feeling jittery one moment and exhausted the next. Recognizing these signs is important because they're your body's way of telling you that the stimulus has peaked and the underlying physiological processes like adenosine buildup and hormonal rebound are kicking in. Understanding that a crash is more than just a bad mood sets the stage for exploring why it happens, starting with the difference between energy and stimulation. It's important to distinguish between real energy and the sensation of energy. True energy comes from ATP production, muscle glycogen, and adequate fuel, things your body can convert into usable work. Stimulation, on the other hand, is a perception created by neurotransmitter release and adrenal activation. When you take a high-stim pre-workout, dopamine and norepinephrine flood your brain, giving you a feeling of alertness and drive. But if you haven't eaten enough or if your muscles lack glycogen, that stimulation sits on top of an empty gas tank. The result is a steep peak of perceived energy followed by a sharp crash when the stimulants wear off. Recognizing this distinction helps explain many of the physiological processes we'll discuss, starting with adenosine rebound. Caffeine is popular because it blocks adenosine receptors in your brain. Adenosine is a neurotransmitter that builds up during wakefulness and makes you feel tired. When caffeine occupies those receptors, you feel more alert. However, adenosine continues to accumulate while you're stimulated. Once the caffeine wears off, adenosine floods the receptors all at once, making you feel suddenly tired and groggy. This is the classic crash. One moment you're buzzing, the next you're struggling to stay awake. Understanding adenosine rebound explains why timing and dosing of caffeine are so important. Too much caffeine too late or without supporting nutrition will almost guarantee a crash as adenosine catches up. But caffeine isn't the only neurotransmitter that plays a role. Next, we'll explore how dopamine and norepinephrine depletion factor in. When you consume high levels of stimulants, your brain releases large amounts of dopamine and norepinephrine. These neurotransmitters are responsible for feelings of motivation, focus, and euphoria. Over time, your brain becomes less sensitive to them, so you need higher doses to feel the same effect, a phenomenon known as tolerance. Meanwhile, dopamine and catecholamine stores can become depleted, contributing to fatigue, low mood, and bigger crashes. This depletion is why you might feel irritable or depressed when the stimulant wears off. It's also why daily use of high-stim formulas often leads to diminishing returns. Recognizing the role of neurotransmitter depletion helps us understand why a crash can feel so bad, and suggests that moderating stimulant intake and cycling off periodically are important. Next, let's examine how stimulants affect your hormonal stress response. Stimulants activate your sympathetic nervous system, the fight-or-flight response, triggering the release of adrenaline and cortisol. These hormones increase heart rate, blood pressure, and glucose availability, giving you a temporary boost. However, taking high doses of caffeine on an empty stomach or late in the day can exaggerate this hormonal spike, leading to an energy slump when levels crash. Chronic activation of the stress response can exhaust your adrenal glands, compromise recovery, and leave you feeling perpetually worn out. If you're already under stress or sleep deprived, adding more stimulants can push you over the edge. Understanding the hormonal stress response underscores the importance of dosing carefully and timing your pre-workout appropriately. Now let's look at how blood sugar swings contribute to crashes. Many pre-workout formulas are loaded with high glycemic sugars to give you quick energy. These sugars rapidly raise blood glucose, prompting your pancreas to release insulin. Once the sugars are used up, your blood glucose can plummet, leaving you exhausted and hungry. If glucose drops below about 70 milligrams per deciliter, you may feel weak, irritable, and cognitively impaired. This roller coaster can lead to cravings for more sugar or caffeine, perpetuating the cycle. Managing blood sugar by eating balanced meals and avoiding large doses of simple sugars in your pre-workout can prevent these swings. Recognizing the role of nutrition leads us to another factor: hydration and electrolytes. Caffeine is a mild diuretic, meaning it increases urine output. Combined with sweating during exercise, this can lead to dehydration and electrolyte loss if you're not careful. When you lose water and minerals like sodium, potassium, and magnesium, your blood volume decreases, reducing oxygen delivery to muscles and making you feel weak. Electrolyte imbalances impair muscle contractions and mental focus, exacerbating the feeling of a crash. Staying hydrated and including electrolyte-rich fluids can mitigate these effects. Understanding hydration sets up our discussion of risk factors, where we'll see how multiple elements combine to increase crash likelihood. Several factors raise your risk of experiencing a crash. High caffeine doses over 300 milligrams or stacking exotic stimulants like yohimbine or PEA analogs can cause a rapid peak followed by a steep drop. Taking pre-workout on an empty stomach deprives your body of real fuel, intensifying the crash. Not eating enough carbohydrates or protein before training, being dehydrated or low in electrolytes, using pre-workouts late in the day, or building tolerance through daily use, all contribute to a higher crash risk. Recognizing these patterns allows you to adjust your habits and avoid the circumstances that lead to energy slumps. Next, let's talk about how to spot crash-prone formulas on the shelf. To steer clear of crash-prone products, become a savvy label reader. First, check the caffeine content per serving. Anything above 200 milligrams may deliver a spike and crash. Look for formulas that combine fast and slow-release sources rather than relying solely on caffeine anhydrous. Watch for large amounts of sugars or maltodextrin, which can cause blood sugar spikes. Be wary of exotic stimulants like yohimbine, rauwolsine, and PEA analogs, which have short half-lives and potent effects. Finally, notice whether the formula includes amino acids, electrolytes, or modulators like L-theanine. A well-balanced product should support focus and endurance without relying on a single high-dose stimulant. With label reading covered, let's move on to practical strategies to avoid the crash. Avoiding a crash starts with selecting the right formula and pairing it with smart habits. Choose a pre-workout with balanced caffeine around 150 to 200 milligrams, or include slow-release sources such as dicaffeine malate. Consider pairing caffeine with L-theanine in a 2-to-1 ratio to smooth the energy curve and reduce jitteriness. Eat a meal or snack containing carbohydrates and protein before training to prevent hypoglycemia. Hydrate well and include electrolytes like sodium, potassium, and magnesium to support muscle function and mental clarity. Rotate off stimulants periodically to reduce tolerance, and explore non-stim pumps or adaptogens for sustainable focus. By adopting these strategies, you can enjoy the benefits of pre-workout supplements without the dreaded crash. Next, let's identify who is most prone to crashing. Crashes don't affect everyone equally. Caffeine-sensitive individuals or beginners may be more susceptible because their bodies aren't used to high doses. People on low carbohydrate or intermittent fasting diets may crash because they lack sufficient glycogen. Those with high stress or poor sleep may experience a more pronounced adrenal response and a deeper crash. Athletes who routinely take high-stim formulas without cycling off can develop tolerance and neurotransmitter depletion, making crashes more likely. Finally, individuals who neglect hydration and micronutrient intake may experience additional fatigue due to electrolyte imbalances. Recognizing your risk factors allows you to tailor your supplement use and lifestyle to avoid crashes. We're now ready to summarize our conclusions. Pre-workout crashes are driven by real physiological mechanisms, including adenosine rebound, neurotransmitter depletion, hormonal stress responses, blood sugar swings, and dehydration. The solution is not to avoid pre-workouts entirely, but to choose balanced formulas and support them with proper nutrition and hydration. Look for products with moderate caffeine and slow-release ingredients, include carbohydrates and electrolytes. Pair caffeine with modulators like L-theanine, and pay attention to your own tolerance. Be mindful of when you take your supplement, listen to your body's signals, and read labels carefully. By doing so, you can boost your performance without the crash and keep your workouts productive and enjoyable. Thank you for joining this talk. For more evidence-based guides on training and nutrition, subscribe to AOF Supplements.